Oh, design and AI. I feel like this is such a huge topic right now, and I'm really excited to be able to talk about what I've learned and what I know about this space. I'm definitely not going to claim to be an expert in AI, so if that's why you came, I'm so sorry to disappoint, but that's not me. I just am a user of AI, and I know how to apply it right now, or I know how our team is applying it, and I have some kind of fun and cool recommendations for how your teams might want to adopt it. And also talk about where it might be going in the future. So we'll jump right in. All right, so this is kind of unsurprising, but we pulled this from a survey of about 400 designers and leaders in the design space who all weighed in on where AI is showing up within the life cycle of product design. And so unsurprising, we see it mostly in this exploration phase. I'm actually very happy about this, and I'm happy to see that delivery phase is so low, just considering all of the limitations that we know that AI kind of comes with. It's very powerful, but obviously has things to worry about in terms of its power. So the exploration phase, I really love that it shows up so much here because I'm actually somebody who, obviously I started as a product designer many years ago, and I suffered from what I used to call this design debilitation syndrome, where the agony of actually starting a project was like debilitating to me, right? And I had so many ideas of where I wanted to take the design, but I had no idea, or I didn't want to pigeonhole myself into going in a direction that maybe wasn't right, or maybe would mislead the clients or mislead my stakeholders into a place that would eventually turn out to be the wrong decision. So again, design debilitation syndrome, it's a very real thing. But I feel like AI kind of gets us over that hump now. We can prompt the tool to say that we want, an experience to vaguely kind of look like this, and all of a sudden we have several different wireframe options or even like full flows that will help solve this problem. And it's a great place to start. It's a great place to start the conversation. And I think that's exactly where it should stay, or at least right now. I like that it's mostly there. Where we do see it show up in the execution and delivery phase is a little bit more nuanced. So we have a design system expert here, Corinne Miller. She's up front here. If you ever want to talk to her about design systems, she's your girl. She's used AI very creatively in being able to deliver very consistent documentation when it comes to design systems. And I feel like that's a perfect place where you're going to see it in execution phase. The other place that I think you're going to see it, and it shows up most often, is more so in like creative assets. Like you're not going to see a full product that was AI generated hit the market. Like I highly recommend not doing that actually. So I think that that's just a reality, but the different pieces and the parts that make up the application, like your photography, your illustration style, things like that, that's where it's going to show up, and that's where it actually hits that execution phase. So I want to talk a bit about the tools. I'm not going to be one of the people that stands up here and is like the LinkedIn haters on AI. I'm sure you guys know that are like read through the comment section there. You always have a few people that are like, no, not AI, I'm definitely not one of those people. I love AI. But we definitely have a reality around the tools that we've adopted and what we've tried and what actually has stuck. And I think that there's another reality, too, that tool fatigue in this space is so real. I don't know about you, but every time I'm on AI, I almost get this anxiety where I'm like, oh my God, there's so many different tools that I want to try, and I don't really have time to try. And it takes time, too, like prompts and like the waiting around for the actual generation of what you just like asked it to produce. I mean, it's minutes, and that all adds up, and it takes so much time. And sometimes I find that all of the tools that are available becomes like a little disruptive and distracting in my process. So, if you're feeling this, I just want to like validate that like you're not alone. I think that all of us kind of feel it, and we try to share with each other as often as possible. Like, hey, we tried this. Here's what's good about it. Here's what's not, and learn and grow from that. So all the different tools, we've tried them all. This is just some of them. I took a little survey with my team just to ask what they've liked, what they've looked at recently. But we have a few winners. Not surprisingly, ChatGPT, I think, is the biggest one, of course, mostly because not only can it help us with the documentation side of design systems, but the image generation, I can't get over it. I think it's still the best. And Lovable and UX Pilot, they kind of do similar things. For me, I don't really use Lovable. I'm not I'm not the biggest fan, mostly because I don't really like to vibe code, but that's just me. But the UX pilot I actually found a ton of value in. So if you guys are looking for a direct one to try, I would highly recommend that one. I like it mostly because it's actually integrated into Figma. And that's kind of, it just takes me, it doesn't take me out of the tool that I'm working in, so it kind of keeps me focused, which I definitely need. I wanted to actually pull this one in only because it struck me today, or it struck me this week, and I was like, I don't have time to actually test this before this talk, but if anyone else has tested it yet, I would love to talk to you after. I feel like this AI product is actually like solving a very real problem. We see this all the time, that we have clients who want to work user testing and usability testing into their process, but it is so expensive. Like usertesting.com has gotten to be so unbelievably expensive. It's not realistic anymore. So this is, I think, a good option. I see some limitations, but it's advertising that it's an AI usability testing prototyping tool, or for prototypes, and could be pretty powerful, but you know, they have great marketing, as all AI products seem to do, and who knows if it actually works well. So if you've used it, please talk to me after. I'd love to pick your brain on it, but I do see it like being really helpful for usability moments, not necessarily when we're like wanting to test our users on context-aware content, or if the flow is actually meeting their user needs. Like that's where it gets a bit more nuanced, but when we're just trying to figure out if this onboarding flow makes sense, or if there's moments of friction or failure, I want to at least be able to pull that out. And if this is a free option for it, that sounds pretty awesome to me. So, you know, I mentioned all these different tools and how we're actually learning about them. This is another unsurprising statistic, but you know, 96% of them are self-taught experiences with the AI tools. And I'm pretty happy about that, just because like I mentioned before, we have all this tool fatigue, and we're always exploring these things, and we're bringing them back to our teams and everything. And you know, I'm happy to hear that like there's not these courses that I'm missing out on, or you know, moments of group learn that I'm missing out on. So it's great to hear that most of everybody is learning by themselves. So this is actually a fun exercise that's kind of related to this. So one of our designers, he mentioned that there's a new AI tool that we should try. It's called Magic Animator. And I was like immediately so excited about this one, because I've always wanted to be in animation. Admittedly, I have not been able to sink my teeth into the ins and outs of all the different keyframes and like how to make these beautiful animations, but I'd love to learn it. But this AI tool marketed to me that said that you can take a simple logo or any like vector graphic, load it in, and it will, with a click of a button, you will get four different treatments, animated treatments of this logo. I was like, this sounds amazing. I need to try this with the cabin logo. It's been on my list to try to animate this thing for a few months here. And this is what I got. Very disappointing. I think that this is the most disappointing animation I've ever seen. And it was a reality moment to me where I was like, I got tricked again by good marketing in these AI tools. And that happens all the time. And but there was a moment here where I actually did learn something, because while this is atrocious, it almost offends me. We're very, we're very passionate about our logo. I can tell you about that someday if you'd like to know. But it was a learning moment for me, because not only was I able to then take this Magic Animator generated animation, but it drives you to open it in Lottie Labs. Well, I hadn't actually I knew of Lottie, but I didn't know about Lottie Labs yet. And Lottie Labs is just a more approachable product to learn animation and to apply animation. That was awesome for me. So now I'm seeing this new product, I'm learning a little bit about it, and then actually seeing how this bad animation was deconstructed was another great learning moment for me, to be like, oh, okay, I get it. I think I know how I can change this going forward, and how I would actually want, I want this to look like a door opening or something like that, instead of this weird compilation. I don't even know what they did to it. But I think I can actually do this on my own now. So while the tool might have failed me in certain ways, I was really happy to see that, happy that I could learn a little bit from it, and now we'll turn my AI experience into something positive for that. So that's a perfect example of why designers are needed now more than ever before. I think that this is probably an obvious statement. The floor used to be here for good design. Now it's like way up here because where we start is way up here. And so now we have all this time and momentum, and we have the ability to spend on the refinement process and actually like creatively inserting the brand moments that are going to set our products apart. And I think that that's kind of the biggest validation point that like our jobs are not going anywhere. I like don't think that that's actually a reality. And there's a lot of things that we can say about that. You know, the products and the designs that AI produces, I mean, yes, they're fundamentally good. They feel good. They look pretty good. I mean, they're using the rounded corners the right way, and like they're bright and pleasant to look at. Like, yes, they're fundamentally good. But are they excellent? And I think that that's the differentiating factor, and it's no. So when we think about how we're using AI, we keep it at that exploration phase and allow the human touch to really come in at that the refinement phase to take it into that excellence, into the excellence layer. There's a quote that says that AI is the mirror and not the muse, and I think that that's actually really powerful because it's exactly right. You know, AI has been told for a year, for whatever, we'll just say like the last year, it's been told these are the things that are beautiful in product design. Like this is the example of really good. This is the example of beautiful. And so when you prompt it, it will generate a beautiful product based off of that, right? But it's not the muse. It's not pushing us further. It's not like giving us the creative edge that's going to set us apart and like actually insert that branding element and the moment of connection. So I don't know, that really resonated with me, and something that I try to keep in mind even as I'm ideating, because sometimes, I don't know if anyone else feels this way, even when I'm using AI to ideate, sometimes it kind of like boxes my creativity in, and I hate that, where I like see something and then I can't see it further anymore, and I'm like, oh, we got to walk away from this. This is not right. Like, that's when I like to not boast about AI. So I think that these are just very real moments, but they remind me of why my job isn't going anywhere, and your product design job is not going anywhere. Like, we need the human element to carry that through. I pulled in this example just to kind of drive this home, but this is from the tool Replit. I didn't actually prompt this, or this is just their, this is like on their website. But essentially, like, I look at this design. The product itself is actually built very smart, and I have some thoughts about that going forward as we start talking about quantum UX in a little bit and stuff like that. But generally speaking, like the design they come up with for these, like, yes, they're good. Like, there's hierarchy, there's pretty good use of space and photography and all that, but like, is it excellent? No. And it's just always something to keep in mind. As sometimes I see these even in the wild online, I'm like, oh, I like that company, but man, I can tell that's not, a human wasn't working on that. So no random acts of design. This is another one of my like guiding principles, and I think it's like very relevant to how we think about excellence in design right now. The thought behind it is that like every moment of design is intentional, right? And keeping that mindset and the intentionality when you're choosing designs and you're trying to connect the dots visually between like a metaphoric, something metaphoric about your brand that's showing up later throughout the design process or throughout your layouts. Like, those are all moments and like intentional moments for delight. And I think that that's like where you really start to see the excellence factor be achieved, is when you have those intentional moments. I think that for the younger designers in the crowd, I go through portfolios and resumes all day long, trying to find our next best product designer. And if you're trying to figure out how to adopt that like level of excellence, I think I would advise you and urge you to always look at products and what's out there today, and like observe and pay attention to the intention behind some of the really good design decisions that you're seeing. Was there some reason around the brand insertion there? Like, does something about the animation or the movement from screen to screen, like tie it back to something about the brand. Like there's all these intentional moments that happen in these really, really good products and really good designs where the brand is showing up, and you know, there's a lot of creativity and maybe color usage and everything, and there's reasons for that. So I just always try to like urge designers to not just design for the user need, anticipate what they might want. Like take a stab, take a guess at what they might actually want to. And that's something that AI can't do, so it will set you apart. I wanted to pull in like a real example of where we're actually using AI right now and where I think that like AI and the taste expression kind of intersect. You know, that's the biggest part that's kind of missing from AI is that like sense of taste, right? And so this is from a product that we recently launched. It's called Amissa. You can check it out on our website. We have a really good, well, actually, no, the website hasn't launched yet. Don't go there. We're redesigning, don't worry. Anyway, so one of our really talented designers, he actually has a background in screenplay writing, which will come into play here. But so Amissa was a company that came to us saying that they wanted to revamp all of their branding. They didn't feel connected to their branding. And this is a women's forward, like, health monitoring application, so really only women are going to be using it, and they wanted it to be a very like connected experience visually, so that meant a lot of photography and like using a lot of expression through the photography. Ben, our designer on this, he like I mentioned, he has a screenplay background, which played so wonderfully into this. He, you know, had nothing to work with. He had no asset library. He like needed to put a bunch of photos into this thing and had nothing to work off of, so he had to create it. And with that, was able to apply the screenplay knowledge of how, you know, settings are described and the lighting is described, and like, okay, we want to make sure that like the images have plants in the background for some of them to bring in moments of clarity and calm. And all of these things were really intentional to like develop these asset libraries. And I think that this was a good application for where we see AI making it into the execution phase, but not driving the rest of the experience. Like I mentioned, we are releasing a video pretty shortly for talking about the case study on this one, so definitely tune in. It's a very interesting product that we built here. But all this is to say that like the prompting is the biggest part of this asset creation and utilizing AI in very deliverable ways. Because Ben was able to like understand the settings and the scenes and everything that he wanted to actually visually include in this, he was able to create this consistent library. And now this is like kind of where I see AI having a shortcoming in how design teams are using it. So, you know, obviously like these images are really beautiful and they are aligned with a color palette and all of that. But what if we had 30 designers working on this project instead of just one? What happens? Like, you know, Ben's really unique screenplay prompting technique is so much different from another designer's prompting technique. And how do we align that very important element to be able to actually get assets that look the same and that feel right? And I think that this is kind of the biggest moment for where design teams are actually going to scale. I get asked this all the time, is like, how do we scale AI within enterprise design teams? You don't really see AI quickly being adopted within enterprise design teams for many reasons, but mostly because, in my opinion, there's a lack of ability to create that consistency that is necessary among a big group of people. And that goes outside of just images. Like now we're talking about like UX writing and how do we make sure that our language is all aligned and consistent. And the consistency is kind of the biggest factor and the biggest thing that's missing there. So when we're working with our enterprise clients, that's always the first, one of my big recommendations is aligning on those things. Yeah, I don't know what's going on. Is aligning on those things. And so, you know, with the emergence of these GEOs and LLMs and how we can, you know, power our prompting ability so that everything is consistent and aligned, like that's a really, really powerful concept and something that I think that most design teams need to be adopting as they think about moving into this AI age. So we talked about the scaling of design teams, and again, I really think that's all about that consistency gap. If we can try to solve that, I feel like we're really going to be taking this pretty far. So moving this even further, quantum UX. This is kind of a new concept if you put a title on it, but I think that most people are using it more than they realize. And the crux of it is that AI is powering quantum UX. So if this is your first time hearing it, it's not as scary as it sounds. Quantum sounds really physics-oriented. I'm not really seeing that too much. But it does get kind of complicated as we start to think about how the emergence of quantum UX is going to be changing our jobs as product designers. And I think that there's going to be quite a substantial shift that we're going to be marching towards as this is happening really quickly. So just a quick example of it, and we can, this is probably the simplest form of it. Think of your Spotify app. When you are listening to it in your kitchen and you walk out to your car and you have a car that automatically connects to your phone, the UI changes as soon as you step into your car. All of a sudden you have bigger buttons and some of the features are not as accessible as they were before. And maybe even the music, I'm not even positive if this happens, but I kind of feel like it does. But sometimes the music that's randomized is different than what would be randomized if I was playing it from, if I was doing yoga or something like that. So it's like they know contextually what I'm doing. And that's exactly what quantum UX is marching towards and is doing. It's essentially all these parallel inputs working at the same time to give us this response that is now coming out in interfaces. So there's a few principles that make up quantum UX. We're talking about simultaneity, contextual awareness, predictive logic, and multimodal inputs. So I'll kind of briefly explain them, but they're all really related. So simultaneity, I just explained this. Like there's a lot of these parallel things that are happening at once that lead to a certain reaction. And when we think about this in the sense of using apps, we can think about how our apps are also having a contextual awareness around us. It knows where we are in a physical space. It maybe also has some contextual awareness from like our Apple Watches and what our heart rate is. And all of these different inputs are feeding into what our AI logic is going to then interpret and then give us an interface out of. And there's a predictive element to this too. So we have all of these different inputs. You get my heart rate, you know that I'm outside, you know that I'm in a cold weather climate. All these different inputs are predicting what my next experience needs to be. And so this is all the things that make up quantum UX, and it's coming quickly in my opinion. Typically, the way that we know product design today, we have the user needs, the user flows, those translate into user interfaces. I'm simplifying it and maybe insulting our product strategists, but this essentially is how we know it, right? When we start thinking about it from the lens of quantum UX, this is where things change a little bit. So we have our user needs, but now we have all these other signals that are also playing into how we need to change the interface around us. So where the user is, what the user's doing, and what is changing about what's changing in real time that's going to be now changing the outcome of the interface that I'm going to be working with. So I'm calling it this like AI decision machine, and I feel like this is kind of where our product design careers are going to be heading. I see the most change happening for this because not only now are we going to be designing for this like new architectural logic for the AI to interpret, but we're also having to put together these design systems that can support so many different permutations of the combinations of the signals that are coming in. It becomes really complicated, and I'm like, oh my gosh, how are we going to account for this? Like, what is this going to mean as I'm putting together design systems going forward? And we're kind of thinking about this as a design team right now. I haven't really seen this be used too often, so we're kind of experimenting with it right now. But we're kind of thinking that maybe it's going to move into the direction of slot components. And maybe instead of seeing the atomic design system in the sense that we know it today, from atoms to molecules to organisms and templates, I bet you it's probably going to just stop somewhere around the atoms and molecules phase, because if we're thinking about it in a slot component sense, We just need to have like the small pieces accounted for that will then be able to get us to that generated state that the AI had interpreted. It's kind of a confusing concept. Once you start wrapping your head around it, I think it starts to come to life. One of my examples that I like to give when I'm explaining this. So imagine, you just landed in Charlotte and you missed your flight, your connecting flight to wherever, the Caribbean. The experience that I'm having when I'm still on the airplane, where I'm sitting in my seat and I finally can turn my phone back on, and now I'm like, oh my God, I have to find a new flight. I have to do all the, I have to talk to an agent. I have to do all these things. It is going to be so much different than the experience that I would have if I was in the airport running around trying to get to the American Airlines service desk. Like there's all these different factors that are playing in. My phone probably is picking up on the motion that I'm moving really quickly, and that I probably can't actually click on things. So maybe instead of this application serving me up clickable interfaces to actually get to the rebooking a flight, it's going to serve me up only a voice interacted interface instead. Like all of these things can be happening all at once. And I think it's going to be crucial to our job to not only anticipate these signals and try to make some sort of predictions around what the combinations are going to be to give us certain interfaces and everything, but that's kind of like one of my favorite examples of it because I think it's the most tangible. Also, we work with American Airlines, so I might want to tell them that someday. But yeah, so I see like the biggest change happening to the design system state. And then, to make it even more complicated, what now happens when we start handing off these designs to our dev teams? We're talking like tons of permutations and tons of different predictions around the different component styles. And where we used to know it of documenting the user scenarios and all of the edge cases and being able to design very effectively against each of those, now I have a feeling that that list is going to be huge. So are we going to be designing for each of those for our dev teams? I hope not. That sounds like a pretty bad use of our time. I feel like that's probably going to require our designers to become more like architectural system writers and be able to think a little bit more aligned to the development team and thinking in that logic. And so I don't know. I think that there's a massive change coming in that direction. I think we know that our tools are changing, kind of for the better. They're elevating our process. They're elevating our ability to get things done faster, and we know that our jobs and how we're doing them is definitely changing as well. And as we're now marching towards this quantum UX space, I think this is another moment where we're like, our jobs are changing in that regard too, and we're really going to have to figure out how to become more efficient with our output for our design systems and how we're communicating with our dev teams. But also probably get really uncomfortable with predicting this human behavior that we weren't really necessarily needing to consider before.